Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 158 of Let's Go Racing. Tyler Jones here with you. Dominic Aragon here as well. As this week, we're going to be joined by Bryan Blackford of DRAFTYCAR, also with the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He's going to tell us about this new racing app focused on drafting. It's pretty fascinating. We'll have a deep dive with Bryan when he joins us coming up in a few moments from right now. Plus, we'll get to our news and notes, the latest headlines around the sport as silly season continues. And we'll also get to our mailbag segment at the end of today's show. But Dominic, we got to start with the events of this weekend. Chase Briscoe pulling a Jeremy Mayfield to win and reach the playoff in exciting fashion. Kyle Larson looked like he had the car to beat, but struggled on the restarts at the end of the race. Chase Briscoe was running well all night long, and then he finished when it mattered. And the thing that I loved about it for Chase Briscoe, Dom, I mean, everybody's going to point to that, getting the win for Stewart-Haas, that could very well be the last win ever for Stewart-Haas Racing. But the thing that we've seen with Chase Briscoe, and you could say this with some of these other young drivers, is the struggle to close races. They can win stages. They can run up front, but sealing the deal and getting it done. He outran some big names, held off Kyle Busch, held off Ryan Blaney. We mentioned Kyle Larson. This was big for Chase Briscoe, not only to get in the playoff, but I think this gives him some momentum heading to Joe Gibbs Racing next year.
Oh, absolutely. I think there was a quote that had said that Chase Briscoe's parents were in victory lane. Coach Gibbs, they all meet for the first time, and Gibbs said, "This is a sight that we're going to get used to seeing. So get used to this," because they see something in him. And of course, he's going to be driving that car. It'll be vacated by Martin Truex Jr. But no, certainly a big win, Tyler. Second career win for Briscoe, his first in nearly 2.5 years and almost 100 races ago. So that tells you a lot of dry spells, a lot of great storylines the last couple of weeks. But Chase Briscoe sending off that 14 team into the playoffs. We talked about on the show years ago, Tyler, how this was a dream job. If Briscoe could have written his script, however, I think he would have been content racing for Tony Stewart for 20 years because that was his childhood hero. And even the way Tony had hired him to that dinner during the pandemic, and they filmed his reaction about putting the contract in front of him. Really cool storybook stuff. It's not going to have the storybook ending, but one way to try and maybe have a final last hurrah, getting that final win potentially. We saw that 14 car get hot in 2011. Chase Briscoe made a deep run in the playoffs in 2022, Tyler. Can't rule the 14 car out.
Yeah, I would say that he's done a very good job in his time at Stewart-Haas Racing, considering how much that organization has struggled. He's been the leader of the pack since taking over for Kevin Harvick since he retired last year. And so now that sets up the NASCAR playoffs. Tyler Reddick with a third-place finish, or not third place in the points where he's at now. Tyler Reddick with a good run ends up winning the regular season title. Oh, so close between him and Kyle Larson. Larson wins the Owners' Championship. So Larson and Reddick in the playoffs. Christopher Bell, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Harrison Burton, Ty Gibbs, and Martin Truex Jr. make your playoff field with Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, and Kyle Busch coming close, but ultimately falling up short of making the playoff. First off, Dom, before we bring in Bryan, just your reaction to the playoff field. I know some people were critical of the win and you're in mentality, but it certainly put on some exciting racing. I'm not expecting it to go away anytime soon. Those bottom four, I don't expect necessarily to contend, but I think it made for a fascinating last few weeks to get in the playoffs here for the racing we saw.
Oh, it certainly has. And I think Kevin Harvick, NASCAR champion, had said it on his podcast earlier this week, too, that this system really doesn't necessarily reward good points days, but winning and that emphasis on winning. Harrison Burton and Chase Briscoe are doing what those four that you just mentioned could not do, and that is win a race. So, and who's not to say, being the momentum-based sport that NASCAR is, I said it last week, and I still stand by it. I think you could say the same with Briscoe, too. These guys have a good run going off in Atlanta. You're setting yourself up really well for the stretch at the Glen and Bristol. Who's not to say some of these guys could advance to the round of 12 or the round of 8.
Yeah, and then you look at just the championship, and we'll talk about more of this later when we get into our news and notes and talk about the playoff field. Tyler Reddick, I think that was a big deal for him in 23-11 to win that regular season title. They've been running really good as of late, but I still think Kyle Larson's the favorite. If Kyle Larson doesn't miss that race in the Coke 600, then he would have won the regular season title. He's got more wins than anybody here. I like what that 23 team's doing. That 23-11 team in the 45 car. Reddick's got momentum, but I still think Larson's the team to beat right now, Dom.
It sure seems like that. Hendrick Motorsports looks great. Tyler Reddick is just doing great on paper as well. That 23-11 team is looking very strong as well. But you got to imagine all those points are going to carry as you go through all of these rounds. And if there's a bad race, we've seen Kyle Larson not do well at the drafting tracks. There's his mulligan, if you will. Maybe at Atlanta, maybe at Talladega, but we know that 5 team is going to be super fast everywhere else.
Yeah, I think so. Dom, our guest this week, Bryan Blackford. Tell the folks about Bryan before we bring him in.
Sure. So Bryan, if you have an iPhone or any kind of smartphone and you have all these cool apps that you download, certainly DRAFTYCAR might be one of them. And we're going to talk more about that app here in a few minutes when we bring Bryan in. But Bryan's a developer of DRAFTYCAR, Speedway Labs LLC, also works with the NASCAR Hall of Fame. We'll talk with him about that as well. But again, this app, Tyler, word of mouth advertisement rather really works. And just you see people talking about this app, and it seemed like it took NASCAR Twitter by storm over the last few weeks. Even Brad Pettis, friend of the show, NASCAR driver, has the app downloaded. I'm sure there's more drivers that have downloaded it, but really cool thing to have on the iPhone. And we had to bring Bryan on to talk about it, especially with the drafting track this week. And who better to all break it down for us than Bryan Blackford. Thank you so much for joining us this week here on Let's Go Racing.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. Take us to the beginning. So we know DRAFTYCAR is out, but there may be folks that are unaware of the app or how it all works. How would you describe what DRAFTYCAR is to maybe somebody who's never heard of it?
Yeah. So DRAFTYCAR expands on a kind of a legacy concept of NASTYCAR back in the day, a game that was developed probably in the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s. I'm not really sure. It's a flash game where you just focus on drafting. So you're headed in a straight line. You've got cars around you. You try to manipulate the air to try to advance your position. There's really, not a whole lot outside of that core mechanic of just drafting. So a lot of developers over the years have kind of iterated on that idea. I know Draft Masters is really popular, Backstretch Battles, and a few others are Five to Go, I believe, was another one. But yeah, just tried to iterate on that core concept of drafting. And yeah, so. And really, expanding upon that, I loved the NASCAR Thunder games growing up and managing, your engines, your chassis, your bodies, just pairing those all together and trying to come up with the best possible race car for any given week. So that was a huge inspiration. And just, Dirt to Daytona, like what an incredible game that was. So just trying to recreate, I guess, some of my childhood memories. And I'm a dad now, so everything, it's hard to sit down on my computer. So if I could just capture that and put it on my phone, that was my ultimate goal. So that's what I work towards.
I got to tell you too, Tyler, you download the game and you play it. And it's like the blend of all these NASCAR games you played as a kid, like NASCAR Racing 2003 season. I feel like the gauges even look like something you would see from that PC-based game. And my first game, Bryan, was NASCAR 99. As a 5-year-old, getting that for Christmas from Santa and playing a lot of time and logging a lot of hours on that. I feel it has like a NASCAR 99, NASCAR Racing 2003 season blend. And I can see those elements of Thunder in there too, because maybe I'm bearing the lead here. But the fact that there's a career mode and you can work your way up through all these different ranks and the parodies of names, I love what you've done with that too, with the sponsorships down to the cards. Like you can tell if you're a diehard NASCAR fan, which paint scheme is which from which era, and I know that's not easy to replicate. I'm sure that took some time to add into the game, but even just down to the details, Tyler, of how very much detail oriented this game is. I think the diehards to the casual fan and everybody in between will get something out of this.
I love it. So I've downloaded it right now. Tell you what, guys, I want to play this while we're doing this segment and see for myself because I haven't got the chance to play it yet. But I mean, drafting in itself, just the idea of it, Brian. I mean, it's so important to motorsports and especially when we talk about restrictor plate racing and all this too. This concept, like it's a unique skill involved. I imagine when I play this here in a moment that it's I would be shocked if this thing was easy.
Yeah, actually, that's a lot of the feedback we've been getting, actually, that it's too hard and people are going out of business or they're in massive debt. But that's actually what we wanted. We wanted the difficulty to be, if anything, a little bit too hard. We didn't want people to just steamroll what I refer to as steamroll the game, where you are just completely overpowering the AI and you're able to just make massive amounts of money, so you don't have to make any financial decisions. So that's that's what we wanted to avoid at all costs, because that really just takes the fun out of it. Just tapping the buttons and trying to figure out which, things to buy. But yeah, no, it's definitely something inspired by NASCAR 99. You mentioned that. I played that a lot. I played the original Papyrus NASCAR racing game on a keyboard, and then my computer broke, and then I had to wait until NASCAR Racing 2003 season to resume my sim racing career. But yeah, no, it's just you know, definitely difficult. A lot of people crash in the first race, especially with the Cup Series. The cup physics are actually. I made an update last night. I might have gone a little too far with, but we're gonna. This is a living and breathing product, and definitely gonna have an update, later tonight for the folks that had some feedback. So it's
Okay,
exciting times.
an update. I'm playing right now. I'm on lap 2 in ninth place.
Okay, that's pretty good. Most people, their first time don't really, I don't know if they always make it to lap two. So the big difference between actually this and Nasty Car, a couple others, I feel like we've got, I say we, it's really just me working on it. But yeah, the big difference there is we actually have crashes. So if you get hit too hard from behind, or if a car,
Oh, I've already been bumped.
yeah, yeah, and if
Just
and if
hold
you
my line and I got hit. What the
the
hell?
little tip, if you change directions too quickly to cover a block or cover a spot, um, regardless of how big that bump is, you might crash. So it's not all just about the intensity of the impact. Sometimes your side to side movement can initiate a crash, depending on how fast you're going side to side.
Okay. So I finished my first race, finished second.
Oh,
Oh,
let's go.
congrats.
Now I got to do this again.
Well, now you got to build on that momentum, Tyler, and go to career mode. And the career mode is just so fascinating, and it's so momentum based. And you get to a point too. I've gotten to the point where, so spoiler alert, if you're wanting to download the game and you're not wanting to find all the stuff just yet, but cover yours over the next 10 seconds. You go all the four series that the game has, and I'm there right in between the beginner series to the truck series, and you're having to make decisions. Well, I got to repair a vehicle. I'm not sure if I can go racing this next year. I'm going to sacrifice points here, but I got to do this. But then I got to take the bank loan out. Like, there are some true financial and some real heavy weighted decisions that come with this game, especially that career mode. I love the thought behind that and the process behind it, because it really makes you think.
Oh yeah, and that's actually what I really wanted to focus on was, everything comes down to money in racing. Money buys speed, money buys your ticket to the racetrack, money is literally everything. My dad actually took me up to Mooresville in 2003. I was a huge NASCAR fan. He had a sabbatical from work, and we went up to North Carolina to visit Mooresville, where at the time there was like hundreds of race teams in Mooresville. Obviously, that made an impression on me. But when we got there at the Welcome Center, they said, "We're so happy you're here. Enjoy your time, but remember that these are businesses. At the end of the day, These are not entertainment complexes. You know what I'm trying to say. These are actual businesses trying to make money, trying to survive in some cases. So just be respectful of that. And that really stuck with me as like I don't know how old I was then, probably, in my teenage years. So yeah, I definitely respected that and wanted people to understand that these are not just race cars, going in circles that that they're guaranteed to be there next week. These are real businesses that have to get the money that they need to operate. And yeah, I'd love to sit down with Denny Hamlin one time and I just want to replicate everything. I like, how much does this cost? How much does that cost? Like, at the end of the day, like, let's just boil it down to like what it is in real life, and then like, maybe people have a better understanding of what it's like to own a cup team.
Well, you hear about that parity too, like how the top guys versus maybe somebody who you can really tell struggling to make it to the track week to week, their budgets and everything's going to be different. So, with all of that in mind and all the dollar amounts that are in the game and all of those concepts, so where did you draw your inspiration from that? Whether it be prior games or consulting teams and drivers, how did all of that aspect of it come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of originally the game was going to be based like in the early 90s. I had a real vibe going on, like, and I decided against it, but what actually stuck was kind of like the money and the payouts and how much things cost. Like, you're picking up a $20,000 rookie rush car to begin your career, kind of unheard of, but I kind of, that's something I'd love to see actually in real motorsports is, an entry, a true, like we have the Cars Tour, but man, is it expensive. I'd love to see like slightly lower price point to get maybe into, the feeder level. So that feeder level is so inviting, you get in there, you start having success. It doesn't cost a whole lot. And I wanted people to have that, like good first experience, but man, as soon as they hit the truck series, it's like a different thing altogether. Like they're hit with like the reality, oh, okay, this game actually scales up in difficulty. So yeah. And you can't really make a whole ton of money very quickly in the rookie series. You kind of have to grind it out in order to purchase your first truck if you meet the eligibility requirements. Yeah, definitely. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to go here.
Oh,
Go ahead, Tyler.
Go ahead, Brian. I'm on the last lap. One lap to go. Presented by Credit One Bank.
Hey, well, that sounds good. We should put it in.
We got the lead. Checkered flag coming.
All
hey, there you
right.
go. There you go.
Yes, I won. There we go.
All right. Well, that was the cup series.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Well, I've been told it's too hard, so maybe it's not.
Yeah, you,
Very
you
good.
got to crank it up a little bit now, Brian. That Tyler one.
Yeah. Now that I won. I did the starter mode. Yeah. Now I would say, Brian, from my short experience playing 3 games while we were on here, I think this would be great for non-racing fans to get a perspective because we hear all the time from the knuckleheads out there. Oh, NASCAR's not really a sport. They're just getting in a car or they're just turning left, whatever. That is one skill set of how many you need in NASCAR, and like it's not easy. I mean, like just drafting alone. Like I would love to see a non-race fan try to play this game, be like, oh, there's more to it than turning left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was trying to do really is just illustrate in a very basic way of how difficult the sport is. Because if you think about it, like you're taking so many things out of it, these pushes that you get, in real life, you have to hang on to them. It doesn't always just stay super straight like it does in drafty car, and people are really having trouble with it. And actually, I've showed it to some coworkers who are really not racing fans, but they tell me like this has like Flappy Bird syndrome. Like I'm really like the difficulty is actually the appeal of the game. They like how difficult it is. Obviously, when you get into career mode, you crash, you owe $60,000 to fix this car. That can have a little level of frustration that comes along with it, but really, I think the difficulty has to stay. It cannot just be like, oh, I just drove through the pack and win, every time. That's not
Right.
really going to be entertaining for folks.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that pay thing. It makes me think about what Sheldon Creed was talking about this week.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And if I remember correctly, Tyler, he said in his interview he's not making a dime doing the race. It kind of reminds me of Daniel Hemrick's deal from a couple years ago, where, for lack of a better phrase, you're renting the ride and you're hoping other things come of it. I'm sure Sheldon's got some endorsements on the side, but an actual salary from the car is just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way the sport has gone, I mean, it comes at a cost, a price to pay. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, from what I've seen, like this game, what you guys are talking about, Brian, I mean, that's just a reality. That's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like I want to replicate it as much as possible. So at the beginning of your career, like in the future, I would love the option of, taking a hot seat, taking a Gibbs ride, or a top level ride in exchange, for real money, or in-game money, and seeing if that can work out and ultimately land a better ride. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes maybe you have to go back to maybe working, for your own team. Yeah, there's so many things to replicate in real life when it comes to like the dynamics of the driver situations. There's so many different situations for all these different drivers, and man, Sheldon drove it. I was at the Xfinity race on Saturday, and he drove so well. His entry into turn one was unbelievable. So yeah, amazing driver. I hope it works out for him.
Have you heard from drivers playing your game or anything yet?
Yeah, so I actually did get to talk with Bubba Wallace after he won the pole. So he was really busy. I could only talk to him for a couple seconds, but he said he loves it. So that was great feedback, and his ads are getting frozen like everybody else's. So he's just like us at the end of the day. I told him we could get him on the beta program though, and turn off those ads for him. But yeah, ultimately, like my vision for the future is, we don't really have ads. The ads maybe are, you know, kind of like baked in. Like maybe you have a Victory Lane sponsor, or like a garage sponsor, something like that that's baked in. And then I would imagine at some point we could have like sponsors for a limited time game mode, like a game mode sponsored by, I don't know, like Napa Auto Parts, and it only lasts for an hour, and the whoever gets the most wins in that hour, wins tickets to the next Martinsville race or something.
And I feel like too, Brian, like speaking onto that and even like adding on to it, I feel like, and again, this was done like a generation ago, like when you would play the EA Sports titles and you'd sign the sponsors in those career modes in NASCAR Thunder 2004, they had real companies a part of it. I feel like with what you're building here, who's not to say companies are interested in what you're doing and they become those partners that you sign instead of the mom and pop names or the generic names. They are real sponsors signed to your car, like how we used to see in those games. I feel like you're onto something where we could see that down the road.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are pretty limitless, especially because it is on mobile and it's so accessible for folks. I just have a lot of I think I have a lot of people playing who are dads, or or maybe they don't necessarily have a ton of free time, for one reason or another. Maybe they're a trucker at a rest stop, or who knows what. But sim racing is great, but it's just not always accessible at the moment, and especially given the variety of circumstances people are in, it's just it's hard to sit down at your computer for, you have to turn, for one thing, you have to actually turn on a computer and wait for it to boot up. And by the time you're logged into iRacing, you got like 10 minutes invested. You can really just load up DraftyCar in 30 seconds, and you're good to go.
And I got to give a shout out actually to one of the people that's a part of the program that you've done here with DRAFTYCAR and the app that you've built with Brandon Cattell. I've known Brandon for about 14 years. We did NASCAR YouTube simulation or stop motion stuff back in the day, and we raced
Oh,
in the same early on leagues in the early 2010s, UNSR and a little bit with FTF. And I just remember too, his dad with the roofing business. I remember they were one of our early partners with the racing experts, and they've gone on to sponsor some NASCAR vehicles as well. And I believe it's Brandon's voice. It's the spotter in the game. So it's really cool. Like I thought that is a very small, minute detail, but it really shows how small the world, especially the small world of motorsports, really is.
yeah. He's been around the sport for a long time. Always a huge fan of Daytona and drafting style racing. And yeah, he really was patient with me. We sat down for the spotter literally took me like I think like 3 weeks to develop. Not counting like actually, just recording his voice, which I was so picky. I'd be like, say that again, say that again, say that again, and mean it this time. Um, no, but Brandon was almost perfect, like his first time saying everything. It was awesome. And yeah, we I think we have one of the only games where it actually calls six wide. I don't know
Oh,
if anybody's ever gotten that call yet. I've been told by people on Twitter X that people have gotten that call. They just didn't believe it. So it is in there though, and yeah, it's a nice little touch. There's middle of five, top of five, bottom of five, and then there's I think there's just one clip for six wide. You're six wide.
geez, imagine going six wide, Tyler. I feel like you probably do that living in the Dallas Fort Worth area, going to work or going around town every day.
Yeah, I would say that I'm a little familiar with that there, but with with all this said of this drafty car and how it came together, uh, now looking ahead, like do you have some other potential ideas cooking up of some games similar or maybe some other modes like
Yeah.
with this?
Well, there's a lot actually. I've been just tossing around like ideas I've been tossing around. My original game idea was totally weird. It was like I was naming it Northern Speedways, and it was literally just tracks covered in snow and just inclement weather. So that was my first idea. I'd love to revisit that sometime because I feel like there is like a real opportunity there just to, try something different in the whole racing game space. But ultimately, like, I think for the next few months, we're gonna just be working on Drafty Car, just making sure all the bugs are fixed and we get the Android folks taken care of. I know Android 14 is, and everybody's in the middle of upgrading their phones to that, and sometimes people have issues with that. So trying to help those folks. But beyond that, I think ultimately we retire this. I use Unreal Engine. We retire this project file, and then we start from scratch, like ground zero. I take everything that I've learned, and then I make a second iteration of DraftyCar, and we just blow it up. We make pretty much every decision you can possibly dream of, I think, in real life, we want to just put it into Drafty Car. So people, even people who aren't fans of the sport, they just when they play this game, they get it. Like they're, it's almost like you're downloading information for them. Like how do I, understand this sport? So yeah, I was thinking like number one thing that would be super cool for me is like I would love to be able to hire a driver as a teammate. And then at that point, like, you can decide, okay, I'm gonna leave Rookie Rush. I'm gonna sell off all my Rookie Rush cars. That's kind of like the standard progression now. Well, in the next iteration of Drafty Car, I would imagine you have a choice to make. You have to, decide, oh, I could sell off these cars, or I can bring in another driver to bring in more money. to run these rookie rush races while I go off into the truck series. And then ultimately, you could have 4 cars per series. So, I mean, you're looking at like a pretty large fleet of cars that you got to manage, and drivers you got to manage, that have maybe their own tendencies. Real live points standings right now, it's just kind of shows you where you are in points. It doesn't show you like the gaps or anything. So, there's so much that can be done, I think, with this concept. So I want to stick with it until it's absolutely perfect, and then I'll move on to something different.
Well, okay, you mentioned something. I want to maybe take it a few steps back here about the files and taking it from ground zero and building it up. So I'm totally nerding out here, and I know the diehards would appreciate this question. But when you talk about like going in to edit the files and how this game is built, you don't have to give trade secrets, of course, but is it similar to like when back in the day we were all doing the NASCAR SC 2003 season and hey, I don't like the way that track drives. I'm going to go into the track INI folder, the core INI folder, and just kind of modify things. Is it kind of set up like that, like this game with the physics and going into the
Yeah.
tracks and grip levels and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah. No, I can speak to that for sure. So you can set it up any which way you want. You can make it overly complicated. You can make it, as simple as you want. I chose to kind of go somewhere in the middle. I tried to make it, like everything is simulated. So like rear drag, front drag, side draft, pullback strength. So when you get, on somebody's quarter panel, your draft, it changes depending on how many cars are in front of you. There's like 4 different levels of draft. So you've got your draft when you've got 1 car in front of you. You've got your draft when you got 30 cars in front of you. There pretty much, does a pretty good job of simulating, real life, I guess, in that sense. And then, all that is kind of calculated for every single car. I had a professional programming buddy sit down with me for like 2 hours the other day, and he looked at that and was absolutely blown away that it works on people's phones because we're applying so many impulses to all the different cars. So it's a very complex system, but I've made it easier for me to edit so I can go in. All right, we need a little bit more rear drag for the leader. Let's just tweak this value and then run a race and see what happens. It's actually really quick to iterate on as far as physics go. That's why I'm kind of throwing so many things at the at the users right now. I'm just kind of seeing like, okay, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And I think people, they like that. They like the change. They like seeing, different styles of racing, and there's so many different ways to really, get this like as fun as possible. So I'm just trying to work through that.
I would say, Tyler, my only feedbacks, I'm loving the app. I think just because I'm the numbers nerd and I love looking at numbers and geeking out on that kind of thing, having like a racing reference kind of page for all your stats. But I'm sure if that's not already in the works, that'd be like my only thing. Like, oh, that'd be really cool to have in the game. But
Yeah.
man, I gotta say, Brian, job well done with what you're doing there with DrafttyCar. I think the only direction it goes up from what you're saying and everything you guys are doing, and you have drivers downloading it and the thousands of people interacting. You guys are onto something pretty special.
Yeah, yeah. And just quick shout out to actually Landon Castle, Parker Kligerman. During the pandemic, this all started with them really. I was kind of like helping Landon with his iRacing races on Fox at the time, like with the Pro Invitational stuff on iRacing. And one night those guys were on Discord and they were talking about making their own racing game, and I was like so impressed, like, wow, you guys, this is really difficult, but you're not like afraid to just jump right in. So I started this in I started my game development journey just 2021, September 8th, 2021. I just sat down and was like, I'm gonna do this. I've always wanted to do it. Let me do it. And I had the time during the pandemic, I guess, a little bit. So yeah, definitely shout out to Parker. He he was making his own racing game on Discord, sharing his screen. I was like, this is too cool. I want to do it too. So shout out to those guys.
What a better way to do that,
That's great.
Brian. You want to do something, you just go and do it. We can all learn
That's
from
my
that inspiration.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I'm a fan. I think I'm going to be playing all night on my phone. You got me addicted. So, job well done there, Bryan. More to come here on Let's Go Racing. We're going to go over the top headlines in the sport, and we'll get to our mailbag segment in just a bit. But, Dom, let's start off with what's going on. Where do you want to start here?
Let's start with charters. What's going to happen with the whole situation going into 2025? Well, Sports Business Journal, friend of the show, Adam Stern, reporting that possibly a charter deal could be imminent. So NASCAR still working with all the teams, and from the latest draft that NASCAR has sent out, sounds like teams might be mulling over the idea of finally signing some sort of deal into 2025. This thing has strung out now into September. The current charter agreement, which guarantees 36 drivers and 36 teams rather, a starting spot in all of the points awarding and exhibition races, is set to expire at the end of the year. Tyler, NASCAR Productions was also seen by SBJ at Darlington Raceway, filming for a second season of the Netflix series. But however, teams have said in there that there's a way to revoke this if there is no charter agreement reached. So kind of hanging in the balance with the contingency. But it sounded like this next charter deal, which would run congruent with the NASCAR television broadcast rights schedule, could go through 2031, but still also unclear if maybe teams would stick together or some teams would sign him, some teams would hold out on the deal. Remains to be seen, but it seems like the charter situation, Tyler, has not stalled out. It's starting to get back going again. And we kind of need to get going if we're being honest. There's 3 months left in the year.
Yeah, because if they do not get something done soon, then Daytona is going to be here before we know it. Do the teams hold out and, you know, have a lockout essentially? You know, I don't think that's off the table at this point in time, you know, with Daytona February be here before we know it. And we saw, you know, what Chris Polk had of the message on the back of his shirt, you know, making a statement without saying anything. And Bryan, just this charter situation, I'd be curious your thoughts. Like, it I know that NASCAR says they want to get something done, you know, here soon with the playoffs and everything. They want to get this behind them, but I'll be surprised if something gets done soon. To me, it seems like it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight.
Yeah, it seems like, there's a little bit of progress with some of the teams, and then other teams, they're, maybe even went a step backwards. So, yeah, ultimately, like, I'm just a fan, and at the end of the day, I want to see race cars on the racetrack at Daytona, and whatever they have to do behind the scenes, let's get it done. The France family has put together this incredible sport, and I'm just a huge fan of it. I'm a huge fan of all the teams, all the drivers, all the personalities, and seeing not seeing some of them, for the Daytona 500, that's unthinkable to me. Yeah, I think we just need to get some ink to paper, and yeah, hopefully it's good. It's a good deal for everybody around. All parties. But yeah, definitely something that can't just linger on too much longer, or we're just, we're not doing ourselves any favors, to any partners or sponsorships. All that stuff has to get done like, yesterday or, months ago. So, the thought of any kind of like lockout scenario, it just doesn't work for these teams that have to operate so far in advance.
Well, Dom, one thing too I found interesting, you know, Steve Phelps, you mentioned Kevin Harvick's podcast. He was on that show a week or two ago, and we haven't heard Steve Phelps talk much about it. You know, that everybody's kind of pointed to Jim France as kind of the point man behind this, but he said something that I felt like should have grabbed more headlines than it did. That NASCAR feels that these teams are not franchises, like these teams have said for a long time that they feel like they're franchises and want their value, to be able to be held in the sport. Just based on that language alone, kind of tells me that the both sides are still far off here.
I had not heard those comments, but that is very telling. And
Exactly. It
yeah,
wasn't talked about enough then. Yes.
yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like I try to stay on top of all the news and headlines, but yeah, I had not heard that. But when you hear something like that, that has to be discouraging from a team standpoint, or it could be a negotiation tactic. I don't know, but we know in the past that NASCAR has even said they don't want to make the charters permanent. So that language that Phelps is using and the whole not making the charters permanent really plays to that. That hey, as long as we have a TV deal, we've got this going. And I feel like on one hand, yeah, I sympathize with the teams, but I also see where NASCAR is coming from too, where you don't want to make this a permanent situation. It could get muddy, but then the teams are the ones taking on a lot of risk on the racetrack too, and with partners and are really surviving based on what kind of sponsorship they can get. So yeah, a very, very interesting situation, but that's very telling with Steve Phelps' comments.
Yeah, certainly so. Don, what else we got?
Well, speaking of racing in the 2025 season, we don't know where this silly season piece of the puzzle rather, is going to fall, but we know that he might be racing somewhere. Daytona winner Harrison Burton, who will be racing for a championship in the playoffs this year in the Cup Series, announced, or at least had said to the media or to reporters at a Wood Brothers Racing celebration sometime in late August, that he knows he will be racing. He's optimistic about his future, just does not really know where that could be, where that's all going to be, but the situation is fluid. But he's feeling like he will be in a car somewhere come 2025. And Tyler, the team I have heard get thrown out, they need some stability after letting their driver go mid-year. Would be an AM Racing type deal for Harrison Burton 2025. Truth to that, we'll see. I guess it's going to play out over the next few weeks, but I got to imagine AM Racing would be happy with the driver, the caliber of Harrison Burton, who has won an Xfinity multiple times, and Burton would also have a stable seat. And plus, he brings Dex funding with him.
Yeah, what I wonder though, like for Harrison, that AM Racing team hasn't had a ton of success in the Xfinity series. Going from the Wood Brothers and making the playoffs and winning a race to a mid-tier, maybe even below that team in the Xfinity series. I would hope that there's an investment there that they can, do what they can to compete, because it doesn't sound like a great situation. Now Joey Logano filled in that seat and had a pretty decent run earlier this year, but I'm a little skeptical about the idea of him going there, because Brian, I mean, Harrison, I feel like he's a talented race car driver. I'd like to see him compete for wins in the Xfinity series. I don't know if AM Racing has that to offer for him.
Yeah, Harrison's a really smooth operator. The Xfinity wins he has, he doesn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. And I think the Cup Series is just incredibly competitive. It's just unbelievable. If you look top to bottom, it's probably one of the most competitive fields we've ever had in Cup. But the AM Racing team. I hope that they could poke around, maybe even strike up a partnership. If they do have like funding like from Dex Imaging, if that were in the realm of possibility, I would imagine like partnering with another Ford Xfinity team would not be off the table for sure. So we'll just have to see. You always think like, oh man, that's a bad move. I think like one of the best examples was like Tony Stewart. I think when he created Stewart Haas Racing, everybody thought it was going to be a downgrade, and little did everybody know he's leading the points the next year. Like going into the All-Star race, I think it was, and just had an incredible year and incredible team behind him.
Yeah. Well, and one point I would make too, Dom, as far as AM Racing, if they were to find a partner in the Ford camp, Ford isn't really invested in the Xfinity series like they used to be. Not saying that wouldn't change. We know about, Haas factory team is going all in with what they're doing. But that to me, like if you're going to find some help, there's not a ton of options in the Ford camp in Xfinity right now.
It certainly seems so. And it would have been like a quality over quantity type thing, I'd say, years ago with Penske and Roush fielding cars like they did. But your options are limited. We have seen AM Racing do pretty well with the little bit of promise that they've had, like with Brett Moffitt running that car last year and posting a lot of top 10 finishes. So that potential's there. But Everybody has potential, Tyler. It's a matter of how you execute that. And maybe there would be a little bit more of a Ford performance step up in 25, knowing that Burton's a proven winner, winning with Ford in Daytona. I feel like that's going to carry something.
Yeah, hopefully so. Don, what else we got?
So heading off into this weekend, and we look at the Quaker State 400. We're going to make our picks here in a minute and look at the odds, but we got to come over that entry list first, Tyler. And some of the names that come to mind. You have 38 cars, so we're going to have a full field. No one's going home. But some of the drivers, you're going to have Cody Ware in the 15, who's coming off that top five finish in Daytona. Shane Van Gisbergen, as he preps for his 2025 rookie campaign and cup, will be running this race in the 16 car. New York Racing coming out of the woodwork, if you will, making their random starts that they are known for doing. JJ Ailey will be fielding the 44 car. In fact, they got their best finish here in the next gen era with Greg Biffle in 2022. And BJ McLeod, who's run a lot of the super speedway races and has shown speed and finished top 10 multiple times in his 78 car. So I pose this question to the both of you. And we'll start with Brian. Of all those names, Cody Ware, SVG, JJ Ailey, BJ McLeod, who do you see making the most noise this weekend or having the best chance of having a really good finish?
Ryan, you go
Yeah,
ahead and start. What do you think?
I was actually, really impressed with SVG at Darlington. He was battling Chase Elliott in the Xfinity race, tooth and nail. I had kind of leaned towards SVG to, I know that he kind of struggled in his debut in the Xfinity Series at Daytona, maybe a little bit in traffic that wasn't quite comfortable yet, but. Yeah, he's been on iRacing. He's been actually working really hard at this kind of stuff, the drafting tracks. I think he'll be great. BJ McLeod, I mean, don't overlook the guy, he's he this is what he does. This is what he prepares for the most out of anything. And yeah, he's showing up with a little bit more speed than normal.
Yeah, those are the two guys I would have said too. I'm excited for SVG, and we know Trackhouse won there the last time we were at Atlanta earlier this year, so they should come prepared and have some speed, even though he's technically in a college car. But I'm sure Trackhouse is involved there. But BJ McLeod too. BJ has surprised some folks with how well he's run on these drafting tracks. So yeah, I'd be looking for those guys down.
Certainly, I would have to agree. I think all four of them could have their highlights and show their speed, but SVG, there's just something about him. We saw him run really well at Talladega earlier this year. BJ McLeod run really well too on the super speedways. That 78 car is just showing up with speed. It's one of those true situations. Again, quality over quantity for the 78 team this time around.
Yeah, certainly so. What are the odds looking like?
So if you guys had to guess, who do you think the odds-on favorite is, and what are their odds for the Quaker State 400? Now, Tyler, if you've already checked, we can't go to you, but we'll see. Have you checked the odds yet?
I'm going to guess Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin about plus 1,000.
Okay, how about you, Brian? Who are the odds-on favorites or favorite, and what are their odds for the weekend?
Yeah, my same odds, kind of, like 1,000. But the first people that came to mind was William Byron and Kyle Busch.
Okay, well, there's some elements of correctness for both of you guys. So according to the racingexperts.com and looking and combing through BetMGM, Caesars, and DraftKings, all three draft books, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch are all co-favorites at plus 1,000 or 10 to 1 to go on and win the Quaker State 400. And of course, Atlanta tends to have odds like Talladega and Daytona, where you don't really see drivers below that plus 1,000 mark. And some of the other select drivers throughout the field include Brad Keselowski at 12 to 1 or plus 1,200. Kyle Larson at 14 to 1 or plus 1,400. William Byron, who won this race in 2022, same as Chase Elliott in 22, both sitting at 14 to 1 or plus 1,400. And you start looking down the list here, Tyler, and you start getting to the 20 to 1, 30 to 1 guys, and like trying to find Daniel Suarez. You're not going to find him towards the top, but 16 to 1 odds, you got to imagine that those are pretty good odds coming off that win in February. Austin Cindric, a good drafter, 20 to 1. Austin Dillon, who's also good at restricted plate tracks, 50 to 1, while his teammates one of the co-favorites. And some of your longest shot odds include Zane Smith, Daniel Hemrick, and BJ McLeod, all at 10,000 to 1 or 100 to 1.
So I got burned last week. I put a $25 bet on Kyle Larson, and I was feeling really good with about 20 laps to go. And then things quickly changed. But something tells me, Dom, I feel like this is the week Ryan Blaney gets back into victory lane. He's run really well here at Atlanta in the past. He's a good drafting track driver. He's trying to defend his title. I think Ryan Blaney finds a way to get it done at Atlanta. That's my pick this week. How about you, Dom?
Man, Ryan Blaney would not be a bad pick, and we've seen him run really well at Atlanta, and he's won before at this track, so he knows how to get it done. This weekend, though, I feel like looking at all these drivers and who could win, it really is like Daytona or Talladega. Big crash takes out some of your top favorite drivers, but I feel like we see the hometown kid, the hometown hero, NASCAR's most popular driver, Chase Elliott, will get it done in the Quicker Seat 400.
All right, Brian, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I'll stick with my original feeling. When you come into these drafting tracks, confidence is at a premium, and if you're coming off a couple of great weeks in a row, I think that is more valuable than almost anything. So I'm gonna stick with Kyle Busch. I think he gets it done and plays spoiler and shuts out all the playoff drivers.
There you go.
Tyler, I picked Kyle Busch the last 3 weeks, and they were all top five finishes. This is the first week I didn't go Kyle Busch. I was tempted, but that's a solid pick, Brian. There's momentum's real in the sport, as we know, and Kyle Busch knows how to get it done.
And I would think too, Brian, that Kyle Busch, even though he didn't make the playoff, that's not going to stop him from competing and racing hard. That he's still going to go at it because he wants to win and wants to keep this record streak going here.
Yeah, and Richard Childress Racing, they thrive off these tracks. They take a lot of pride in going out in there and being fast. I'm sure they'll be fast in the Xfinity race. They'll be fast in Cup. It's just what they do.
Certainly so. Time for our mailbag segment this week. You can submit questions to us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Also on X and Facebook at Star Podcast. You can find us there. And our first question in the mailbag comes from Bruce. Bruce wants to know, Brian, with you being the creator of Drafty, what are some of your favorite NASCAR video games that you've played over the years?
Yeah, we did cover them, I believe. So Dirt to Daytona, absolutely one of my favorite, and just the feeling and the grit and the just kind of the rustic feel of your shop in Dirt to Daytona was so freaking cool. I just love that. Obviously, NASCAR Racing 2003 season, I grew up and in that video game pretty much. Dale Earnhardt Jr. invited me to his it wasn't Dale Jr., but somebody from Dale Jr.'s league invited me to race in DMP, Dale Jr.'s league, and I got to race door to door with Dale back in like 2006. So, I can hang my hat on that. But yeah, NASCAR Thunder 2003, 2004, I think are my favorites for the Thunder series. And the soundtrack on those games are just so good. They inspired the soundtrack for DRAFTYCAR immensely.
Dominic, one game I loved growing up that I don't feel like it's talked about enough. It was totally unrealistic. I'll say that off the top, but it was so cool. NASCAR 06 Total Team Control, where you could literally switch to another teammate's car in the middle of the race, whether you crashed out or if you want to just get to the front. That's very rare that ever happens, but that was so outside the box. I loved that game.
That was different. That was totally a different concept. Never before, I believe, seen any racing game like that, or at least in the NASCAR realm. Certainly good stuff there. And I just got to relate back to my two NASCAR 99 for getting me hooked on motorsports. A kid from Grants, New Mexico, where there's no motorsports people here in New Mexico, as we've talked about. But Santa, thank you for getting me NASCAR 99. And of course, in our 2003, Tyler, I know we've tried to get you involved with the leagues before, but I've made some lifelong friends out of running some of that stuff. And I'll be the first to tell you, Brian, I was never good at setting up a car. I got a lucky run once in a while. Some of these leagues, we'd have 20 drivers and I'd be in the back half of it, but just racing my butt off against the guys that were in my league, if you will, and just having a good time with it.
Yeah, and shout out to the undisputed best racing game of all time, Mario Kart.
Oh, how can we forget
Yeah,
Mario Kart, Tyler?
Mario Kart was
Pretty good.
great. I loved Need for Speed back in the day. I always loved the street courses. Like you play the EA Sports games and running through downtown New York at night, or uh, some of the fictional courses they'd come up with. Like I remember Old Spice Speedway
Mhm.
or Dodge Raceway. Some of these places were so unique. I mean, they were sometimes better than the actual real tracks.
Daytona Beach in NASCAR Thunder 2004, you actually ran the course they ran in the 50s. One of the coolest tracks. It was like Martinsville with Talladega straightaways, if you will. Those tight corners. It was so cool.
Yeah, or running wheeling modified cars in the EA Sports games. I mean, like the games they make now are are not even close in comparison. Like you run the Cup Series and that
Mhm. Absolutely. No,
so
so some of those games were just so innovative, so ahead of their time. Those tracks, that was the Old Spice. It was like a road course type deal, or was that the one that was like the Levi Strauss Speedway? And they changed the
yes.
names over. So many cool tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, that takes me back a bit. That's pretty cool stuff there. Next question for Brian. This one comes from Bill. Bill wants to know, uh, uh, Brian, what are some of your favorite drivers that you've raced with, or paint schemes that you liked in some NASCAR games over the years?
Man, thanks for the question, Bill. So real drivers or just
Anything? Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I think one of my fondest memories is actually racing Denny Hamlin. And I think it was the DMP pickup server probably around Thanksgiving time frame in maybe 2005, before maybe 2004, before he got I think he was just starting to make some Xfinity starts. We were racing at Dental Park. It kind of like a downloadable track for NASCAR Racing 2003. Just tremendous banking. Like just imagine 40, 50 degrees of banking. So I crashed Denny Hamlin off turn two, and on the first lap. So we didn't even get going. And he proceeded to just full throttle me all the entire length of the straightaway, just full throttle me all the way down the straightaway in my door. So we just I went for a little ride, thank courtesy of Denny Hamlin. That made an impression on me as like, a 13-year-old, knowing that I got taken out by a Xfinity guy at the time. Or I took out future Hall of Famer for sure. So that was cool. But yeah, no, just been a cool ride, I guess. Just playing racing video games. But just in general, I always trying to find the more realistic version. Where like we kind of stopped console games especially stopped innovating, and like it's kind of been sad for a while. So hopefully we can turn that around.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully so. Dom, how about you? How about some of your favorite drivers you've raced as or with, or some of your favorite paint schemes?
Man, so race to with haven't had the pleasure to race against Danny Hamlin or anything like that, but really cool to race against Brad Perez. And there was who's the other one? Brad immediately comes to mind. Andre Castro's another. Runs in the Xfinity series from time to time. We all ran at UNSR. In fact, I think he and I were teammates 10, 12 years ago in this little UNSR league that we used to run in. So really cool to see that these guys have made it, and not only them, but some of the other people that have made it in the sport too in other rounds. Like Matt Wishart comes to mind, NASCAR photographer, Brandon Cattell with the iRacing stuff, Brian Mercurio. So things like that come to mind, Tyler. Well, one of my favorite paint schemes to race. And I've talked about it on this show before too, but that Jeff Bodine Phillips 1998 car that raced in NASCAR 99. Loved racing that as a kid, and then to ultimately grow up and work with him on his book and stuff, it was certainly a dream come true. So certainly some fond memories there. Let's say you, Tyler.
I have never raced with a driver, unfortunately. Maybe I'll change that someday. But Some of my favorite like drivers I've raced as or their paint schemes. Like I love the feature in the old EA Sports game where you could, if you bought enough points, you could buy the UPS truck and race as Dale Jarrett. Right? Finally race the truck. That was awesome. I love those ads back in the day. Um, you know, it always you achieve something when you reach enough points to buy Dale Senior's number 3, and then you'd reach something there. I always thought that was cool. I always got a kick, guys, of the NASCAR games. I think they're even it still is the same to this day. That blur out the beer sponsors or put the driver's name on it or something like that. Like to me, that was always hilarious because you could have you know a race that was sponsored by some company that was out there like the Viagra 400, but you still couldn't drive the Budweiser car. I mean, like there was all sorts of stuff like that I always found hilarious was not seeing their names. Like even 5 Hour Energy. I remember back in the day you couldn't drive the Clint Boyer car with 5 Hour Energy. It'd say Clint Boyer on it. I'm like, really? It's 5 Hour Energy here, people. But yeah, I mean that's to me kind of the things that come to mind there, Dom.
Absolutely. I forgot about that. The Clint, who wants to wheel the number 15 Clint Boyer Toyota for Michael Walsh Racing?
Right. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Or the Sterling Marlin number 40 Dodge for Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Bryan, as we're kind of wrapping up here, plug away. Where can people download the app and find out more information about all the stuff you're doing, man?
Yeah. So we have a website, speedwaylabs.com. You can join our Discord. I have not been as active as I need to be on there, but I do read like all the reviews. I read all of the posts on X. You can find me there at Bryan, Bryan, Black, short for my last name, Blackford, 33. So follow me on there. And yeah, I'm most active on the X platform. I think it's probably still the best out of all those social medias. Um, yeah, it's definitely the easiest way to get some direct feedback or direct communications right away. I guess my DMs are open, as they say, and yeah, obviously my email is actually on the main menu of the game. So, if you really have a detailed crash report or something pertinent to share with me, that is also a great way to get in touch. I've been trying to keep up with the emails, but it's been a little overwhelming, I guess, the last few days. But yeah, it's the game's available on the App Store for iOS, and then on the Google Play Store for Android. We are working through some issues with Android 14 and Pixel users, and it looks like we need to upgrade our Unreal Engine to 5.4. So we're on 5.3 right now. So once we get that done, hopefully, everybody will get to enjoy the game crash free, no problems ever. I'll just sit back and play DRAFTYCAR actually.
Love it. Love it. Certainly excited about that. Dom, what's going on in your world this week?
Yeah, so this past weekend it was nice to be home, and we went to the recording studio with some old bandmates and recorded a song. But this weekend, hitting the road, going to Atlanta Motor Speedway to help cover the action with the racingexperts.com. And myself, our photographer Marcus Lena, will be out there, and of course our team covering all of that stuff from boots on the ground in Atlanta to across the country with the rest of our team. So should be good. And I know, Tyler, you had your trip out to Vegas to conclude the Summer of Jones, but I heard there's going to be an encore with the Summer of Jones before it's all said and done.
Is that what you're calling it? Is that what people are saying? So much for canceling it. You're trying to keep it going. Yes, I'm headed to your neck of the woods, going to Albuquerque next weekend, taking a visit to the Dom zone. So we should have a good time with that next week. And then off to Tampa here in a few weeks as well. So yeah, still doing some traveling. Had a good visit in Vegas last week. I'm still upset about Kyle Larson not pulling off the win. Cost me $25. It was the payout that I was really wanting. It would have won me 150. So, but nonetheless, came out ahead in Vegas, made $300. So that's always a positive. Certainly
Profit.
take that. So,
Definitely, profit is profit.
profit is profit, exactly. So had a great time, and certainly just gonna enjoy things at home this weekend with the NFL regular season starting on Thursday, and with the Chiefs and Ravens. Go Chiefs! And yeah, so some great stuff going on here. So, Bryan, what's going on with you? You head back out the racetrack anytime soon?
I think my next race might be Talladega or the Roval. I haven't quite decided on Talladega yet, but yeah, I got to meet up. I went through the infield at Darlington, got to hang out with some just some of my people, NASCAR fans. I just I love the energy in Darlington, the infield. Like it's just like people are just so nice and humble and usually really cool. So just definitely want to get back out there, and I want to wear my DRAFTYCAR T-shirt that I didn't have, to my next race. So might pick up a couple of fans along the way. So no, yeah, I'm planning on just staying home watching the Atlanta races. Always intrigued by those races because it's so different nowadays, than what I grew up with. But yeah, gonna watch and continue to develop. I'm kind of like typing and looking up and typing and clicking, and yep, that's pretty much my weekend.
Very good. Well, guys, a lot of fun doing this. Bryan, thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you back on again in the future. Check out the app known as DRAFTYCAR, available to download for free. And I'm already winning, so that's a good start there. So I'm looking forward to career mode. And there's Dominic; he's got it with it as well. We'll
Yeah,
put
and
the checker flag.
we've got a premium version coming along. So if you really don't like the ads, just hang tight. Don't download it yet. If you don't like ads, just hang tight. We'll have it, available ad free very soon.
I love it. Great stuff there. We'll put the checkered flag out in this edition of Let's Go Racing. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also on YouTube as well. Hit the like button. We certainly appreciate it. Also follow us on social media at Star Podcast on X, Facebook, and you can email us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. This show, part of the Studio Soapbox Network. Check out this show, as well as the Jones Report and the Coach Bo Knows podcast on all podcast platforms. For Dominic Aragon and Bryan Blackford, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. This has been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.